they perceived correctly, right? This was the whole point of the parable that Jesus just told, we looked at yesterday. You can't reject me and think there's a future with God, right? You can't reject Jesus and have your cake and eat it too, right? Like that's what people want still today. They want to have God in their own fashion, in their own mold. And Jesus is telling them and telling us, what we learned yesterday, He's the chief cornerstone. He's essential. Without Him, there is no salvation. Without Him, there is no hope and future. And so they got together and they wanted to do something about it because they understood that this was spoken against them. And rather than surrender and submit to Jesus and His lordship, they fight back. But they're afraid of the people. So they watched Him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere and that they might catch Him in something He said so as to deliver Him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. Right? So they send in these little spies. So they asked Him, "Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God." Right? They're not sincere in this at all. What they're doing is they've got a setup, they've got a plan, because if they can catch Jesus saying something contrary to Rome, now they've got something to bring to the authorities, right? And that's what they're looking for. And so they ask, verse 22, "Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not?" But He perceived, that's Jesus, He understood their craftiness and said to them, "Show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have?" And they said, "Caesar's." And He said to them, "Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." They were not able in the presence of the people to catch Him in what He said, but marveling at His answer, they became silent. What's Jesus doing? He's working His way through a very tricky situation, right? They're hoping to catch Him so that they can bring charges up against Him to the Romans. That's what they're doing. And so they ask this question about taxes. And they understand how the Jews feel about taxes, right? Because it's not like they're paying taxes to their own government for their own benefit. It's to a foreign government to their benefit. And so they ask the question, is it lawful? And so Jesus gets the denarius, says whose inscription is on there and whose likeness, and they said Caesar. So He says, well, give to Caesar what's due to Caesar. Right? Like, pay your share. He's not calling for anarchy. Many want that, and many were expecting that from the Messiah. Because they're looking for that king. And we've talked about this in Luke often, that the king has come, the kingdom is here, but it's not yet. And so when He says, hey, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, He's saying what the New Testament tells us is do your best to live peaceably with all men, right? There's going to be places and times where you're not going to be able to do that, but paying your taxes is not one. And then the things that are God to God, right? Like, ultimately we could say all of it's God's, right? And so how are you handling and stewarding God's resources? And so they were not able to stump Him, which shouldn't be a surprise, but it reveals something else about what Jesus is looking for. He's more concerned with our heart and our spirit than the physicality of tearing down political ideology, if you will, right? He's like, just do what you need to do there, but do what you need to do with God as well, right? Like, surrender. And, if they're Jews and they're asking about the giving and all these kind of things, like, you know what to do, right? And if New Testament church, what would that look like? Well, Corinthians, we talk about giving cheerfully and giving unto the Lord. And so their plan didn't work. And sometimes we make plans apart from the Lord, but we have to go back to that parable and realize Jesus is essential for anything and everything. For all that we do, all that we have, He's essential. Till next time, keep growing, little by little.